Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the Inside Cruiser. I am your host. My name's Simon and it is my great pleasure to be with you here today. So, apologies for my lack of videos over the last week or two. Actually, as you may notice, I have a bit of a cold. Nothing COVID related, just a cold and flu that I've been getting over. And so... yeah, I've made a couple of videos that I haven't posted yet, and I'm making another one today. I'm kind of better. I've still got a really runny nose, but getting back to normal. So, first things first. Today, our video is actually going to be about the different job types and jobs that are available on board cruise ships. So, if you've worked on cruise ships before, you will know all of this. If you haven't, then this will be a good kind of insight into the positions. Because when I first started back in 2002, I was actually on as a bartender. I went on as a bartender, and I had been managing cocktail bars and restaurants in London. And I just wanted to go on and bartend and travel around the world and have fun. And actually, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab a tissue. I do apologize. I'll be back in 1 sec. I thought I was sniffle free before I made this video, but now it's starting to run again. So again, many apologies. Again, it's not COVID related, just a regular regular cold. So, like I was saying, I started in 2002, but I went on board Royal Caribbean actually as a bartender, and I had never worked on cruise ships before. I had no idea about the size of them or the vast amount of jobs that were available on board. I literally went on because I wanted to, like I said, just have some fun, to party a little bit, and travel around the world. Which I did. Now, when I got on board, I'll be honest with you, I was probably one of maybe 3 white bartenders. Most of the bar staff on board were from the Caribbean or the Philippines. And not that was an issue. It's just that's the way it was. So, but then I saw all of the other jobs that opened up to me, and I have an entertainment background, so I saw the kind of like the crew staff jobs and whatever, and I was like, wow, I'd love to do that. So eventually, I ended up being crew staff, and then I went on from being crew staff to being assistant cruise director. Then I did the art director job as well. So I have quite a bit of experience in the different jobs on board. Excuse me again. So the point of the video today is to tell you what kind of jobs are available. So for those of you thinking that you might like to have a job on cruise ships, this will give you an idea of what you might be able to do. Now, first of all, obviously it differs slightly from ship to ship. Like some cruise lines will have different jobs or job titles that other cruise lines won't. But for the main part, you have these main jobs that I'll be mentioning. So the first thing to know is that the ship is divided into 2 main sections. One is marine, which is all mechanical kind of ship operations, from the captain down to the staff captain, the engineers, the deck and engine hands, the first officers, etc. That's all classified as the marine department. And then you have the hotel department, and the hotel department is pretty much everything not to do with the running of the ship, like mechanically wise. So hotel department could be anything from waiters to singers and dancers to pursers, who are the kind of guest relations officers, as it were, to the hotel director, which would be like a hotel general manager. That is all the hotel department. So I'm going to run through not every single one because there's a lot. but I'm going to run through the main kind of hotel department jobs. Now, within the hotel department, and the reason I'm going to start with the hotel department is because I will be honest with you and tell you I'm not an expert on the kind of subdivisions within the marine department. So I'll get to that a little bit later. But within the hotel department itself, first of all, on a ship, as you know, you've got a hierarchy of officers. They range from, and again, depending on the cruise line, this may differ. The stripes, basically. So in general, you have a 4-stripe officer, which is the highest you can get. Now, again, some cruise lines, their highest officers might be 4.5 stripe or what have you, but generally the 4-stripe is the highest you can get, and that is generally held by the captain, the staff captain, and the hotel director. They're normally your 3 kind of 4-stripe officers, and they are the highest ranking on the ship. But within the hotel department, you have some like subdivisions of departments as well, like subdepartments. So you have food and beverage. That is the largest department within the hotel department. Obviously, food and beverage is exactly what it says. It's all of your waiters, your bartenders, bar servers, cooks, etc. So that is your food and beverage department. Then you have the entertainment department, and that can be anything from youth staff, the guys that look after the kids, your cruise staff, the people who do the activities like bingo or quizzes or pool games or stuff like that. Activities such as that. And then within the cruise department as well, you also have, if they have them, they have sports staff. You have singers and dancers. And then you have production staff, which are the backstage people, the lighting and sound techs, etc., etc. That's your entertainment department and your food and beverage department. Those are the 2 kind of main departments. And then you have facilities, which is obviously super important. I mean, all of the departments are important, but facilities are the people that would do kind of like the maintenance, not really the maintenance, but more the upkeep of the ship, so and the public areas. So the brass railings, they all get polished by people. That's facilities. Your staterooms get made up by your beds and your cabins and staterooms and whatever. They get made up every day. That's another department as well. And your facilities, they clean the brass and they clean the toilets and all the public areas. They vacuum, they do all of that kind of stuff, and then like small maintenance as well. And that's another large department within the hotel department. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the food and beverage department. So the food and beverage department, obviously, the hotel director oversees all of the hotel department, but within that, you then have the food and beverage director or food and beverage manager. They take care of the bars and the food, so the dining rooms, etc., etc. So that is that's a very big job. And then underneath the food and beverage director, you then have the restaurant managers or maitre d's, and then you have the bar managers. And then you have, restaurant supervisors, bar supervisors, and then you have your bartenders, your bar waiters, your assistant waiters, and they all come under the food and beverage department. And now, obviously, then included in the food and beverage department, you have your various cooks. So you've got your executive chef, which is kind of like your top guy. Then you have excuse me, your sous chefs and your chef de parties, and then your prep cooks and line cooks, etc., etc. So those are all jobs that fall under the food and beverage department also. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these employees on board. Now, that is essentially your food and beverage department. And those various different jobs, they will have other side jobs and what have you, which I'll get into in a little bit. Now, within the entertainment department, you have your singers and dancers, production cast, we call them. And they are generally, I don't want to say an easy job, but hours-wise, they get a lot of free time. They do their shows, and they have a lot of free time. On some cruise lines, they'll do other activities as well, but primarily they just do the shows and maybe a couple of theme nights and what have you. So they tend to have a lot of free time. So it's a pretty cushy job to have. On the flip side, obviously, you need to have the talent and the experience to get that position in the first place. But heading up I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Heading up the cruise department generally is your cruise director. He or she is normally a 3-stripe officer, and he or she will be in charge of all of the entertainment department. So that means the singers, the dancers, the cruise staff, the sports staff, the youth staff, the orchestra, the bands, and the production staff, the people who take care of the the backstage staff, etc., etc. Under your cruise director, you have your assistant cruise director. On Royal Caribbean, for example, they did away with the assistant cruise director role, and they split it into two, and they created two roles out of it. One was called activities manager, and the other one was called CPA, or cruise program administrator. This is just on Royal Caribbean. And how that worked was they wanted the assistant cruise director to have, or the activities manager to be, the front-facing kind of assistant cruise director role, meaning they're out and about and doing activities, etc. And they gave a lot of the admin work to the cruise program administrator to free up the assistant cruise director's role, if that makes sense. So you got your cruise director, your assistant cruise director, or activities manager, your cruise program administrator. Then you have your sports staff. There's normally a sports staff manager, and then you have your youth staff, and there's generally a youth staff manager. Then you have your orchestra, and you generally have a band leader. So again, these are the people in charge of these departments directly. And then a production cast, and you would have a production team manager. So that would be the person who's in charge of all the backstage staff, lighting and sound and broadcast technicians on board. But supervising all of those, like I said, you go back up to the top. You've got your cruise director, and then you have your activities manager or assistant cruise director underneath that. So then you do have sports staff, and sports staff, for example, on a Royal Caribbean ship, they would deal with the rock climbing wall, the ice rink, the flow rider, anything sporty related. So if you have, if you had any games, basketball games or anything like that, that would be normally taken care of by the sports staff. The youth staff, obviously, they are the people in charge of all of the children's programs, which most ships have. So if you, a lot of them do require a degree in child learning or something similar. Some of them don't. I'm not au fait with every cruise line as to what their exact requirements are, but I believe most of them do require a degree of some kind in early child education or something to that effect. Your cruise staff doesn't. Cruise staff, you basically just need to be good on a microphone and have personality, and not be scared of large audiences, which is, might sound easy, but to some people that's an absolute nightmare, and to some people it's not. I did theater a lot back in my younger years, and MC'd a lot. So for me, that was easy. The one thing that I didn't know how to do, which I was expected to, was how to teach line dancing and country line dancing. But I learned pretty quickly because you do have to teach all of that. So that now within the cruise department, like I said, you have singers and dancers. They generally come through kind of like a separate agency, as it were. And normally if you do get cast, you will get cast and then you will do rehearsals in Florida on land before they put you on the ship. Because once you get on the ship, I think you have maybe a week, if that, of handover between the old cast getting off and the new cast getting on. And they are shows that they don't change that often. So, and again, like Royal Caribbean will do full production shows, like Hairspray or Grease or Mamma Mia, but most ships don't. They just do kind of variety shows. And production cast, some production staff can literally just, most of you will have to have some kind of knowledge of lighting, sound, or something to that effect, because you'll have to set up all that kind of stuff. Some of them will just be backstage crew, you know, moving sets around, etc., etc. Excuse me. And that is your production cast. What else is there within the cruise department? Yeah, if you want to be, normally it's unusual that you'll get hired straight on as a cruise director, unless you've been a cruise director on another cruise line for years. Then they might take you on straight as a cruise director. But generally, you would get hired on as crew staff or maybe an assistant cruise director and work your way up from there. I personally, I got hired as crew staff after I left my bartending position, and then just basically just harassed and learned the job of assistant cruise director. And with Royal Caribbean at the time, you had to audition for cruise director, and then they would make you kind of assistant cruise director, meaning that if anything happened to the cruise director, they knew that you were qualified to step straight into that role. Okay, so that's the entertainment department in a nutshell. Moving over to the food and beverage department. So food and beverage department, like I said, you have your food and beverage manager that's pretty much in charge of everything from kitchen to dining room to bars, etc. And again, you can get hired straight on as food and beverage manager, but generally, again, you have to have a significant amount of experience either in 5-star hotels on land or a similar role on another ship or on another cruise line. A lot of times they get promoted from within. Moving down from that, you have the restaurant managers and or maitre d's, and they are in charge of the dining rooms and restaurants. Again, similar to food and beverage manager, they like to promote from within. And again, 5-star hotel on land or equivalent on another cruise ship to walk straight into that role. Beneath that, you have your your senior servers, and then your servers, and then your server assistants. If you have very little serving experience, you would might get hired as a server assistant and then work your way up. These positions are very lucrative because you get a basic salary, but you also get tips. And nowadays they have, before you would get a little envelope and the guests would give you your gratuities. But depending on where you were sailing, you might not. So for example, if you're sailing out of the UK, your tips might be reduced a lot because traditionally British people don't tip. It's not in their culture to do so, and so your tips would be a lot lower. Now the cruise lines, you basically get charged say for example $15 per person per day, and those tips get divided up between your servers and your stateroom attendants, etc., etc. So that's the dining room. In the bars, you generally have your bar manager, your assistant bar manager, your bar supervisors, and your bartenders. And then you have bar servers, which are the people who bring the drinks to the guests, just like a regular server in a restaurant, but specifically for the bar. again, you get basic salary plus gratuities. Generally, unless you're quite an experienced bartender, you won't get a job straight as a bartender. You'll have to go in as a bar server and learn. When I started, I went straight in as a bartender because I had